So with the if-else construction, we can run certain commands in MATLAB depending on whether certain conditions are met. Now the other use for if-else things is to actually enter some sort of error messages and various other things if we want to check that the arguments made for a function, for example, are meeting the requirements. Okay, so it's often a good idea to add a few conditional statements at the start of functions to check to see that the correct forms of the inputs have been used. And so if we go back to our cylinder volume calculator, which is this function here, okay, this is the one with where it worked out the based upon the diameter and the height, it would work out the volume of a cylinder. Okay, and this is very simple. Like I said, it just you enter the numbers, it does the calculation and returns the volume of the cylinder. Okay, we saw this earlier. But let's check. Let's do some checking to see whether the numbers entered are correct. So the first one I'm going to put is I'm going to say if, and then we can say means not. There's a function called isNumeric, and that checks to see whether it's a number. Okay, we're going to check the entry for diameter. Okay, or is numeric, and we can check the height as well. Okay, so we're going to say if the diameter is not a numeric number, or if the height is not a numeric number, so this is an error check format. Okay, then we can actually type error, and this does the same thing as this but stops the program. Inputs must be numeric. Function terminating. Okay, so that gives us some information. Okay, then we can say end. So that checks whether things are numeric, and we can also say if diameter is less than or equal to 0, or the height is less than or equal to 0, then we say error. We can say dimensions must be greater than 1, function terminating. Okay, and then it runs the commands for the thing. So basically we're doing some error checking now. So we've got these two inputs, arguments to the function, diameter and height. So we now have an if statement that checks that those values are numbers. Okay, so it's saying if it's numeric, if it's not numeric, because we've got the tilde sign here, if it's not numeric, or if the height is not numeric, then it comes up with this error saying inputs must be numeric, function terminating. And now the reason why we're using error instead of disp is that error will actually stop the function running. Okay, if we had just had disp, it would show this line and then it would continue to run the function. And likewise, if the diameter entered is less than 0 and the height is less than 0, then it will show dimensions must be greater than 1, and again the function is terminating. So again, it's an error, not a disp. And if those things are met, okay, if those things are not met, then it skips them, okay, and we'll then run the function down here, calculating the cross-sectional area, and then work out the volume of the cylinder. So let's test this out, shall we? Okay, so then we're going to go for, let's go for volume cylinder equals calc vol. Okay, there's our function name, and we'll go for 3 and 5. Okay. So theoretically, this should give us the value. Okay, now let's do this similar thing, and I'm going to enter. But if I entered a string of characters like this, okay, inputs must be numeric because A is not a numeric value; it's a string. Okay. Now the other thing I could try, -3. Let's try that. Dimensions must be greater than 1. Function terminating. So you can see. If I enter a string of characters, which are in quotes in here, it comes up with an error saying inputs must be numeric, function terminating. Or if I enter a negative number, then it says dimensions must be greater than 1, function terminating. Okay, so if we look at the lines, if we look at this line here, these things here, it says that this line checks whether either of the two input variables are negative, so that'd be invalid. Okay. And for the case where the inputs are acceptable, MATLAB moves on to the next lines of code. Okay. Otherwise, the error function on this line here, line 19, is used to stop MATLAB and display the error code, error thing. And like I said, if this one and on this one here, if a number is not numeric, which is what the tilde does, or the height is not numeric, then it says the inputs must be numeric. Now we've used diff, we've used error. The other thing we could actually do is another type of command called warning. The other thing we could do, instead of actually having this command here, we could actually say, let's comment that out. Okay. The other thing we could do is we could actually say, well, let's make an assumption that they didn't mean to enter negative values, and we can say if diameter is less than 0, or the height is less than 0, so it's checking for negative values entered. Then what we could actually say is, well, let's say diameter equals the absolute value of diameter, and height is the absolute value of height. Okay. Now, instead of saying diff that we've got it wrong, we can actually write warning. Okay. Negative dimension entered using absolute value. Okay, so what that does basically is the MATLAB is going to give a warning where a non-critical problem is encountered. So it's not going to actually stop the program. It's just going to say, okay, well, we've done something else, and it's making us aware of that. So if we now go for the same command, but again, calc value -3 and 5, it'll actually give us a volume, okay, but it's given us a warning written in here: negative dimensions entered using absolute values. So it's notified us that something is going on, because -3 is obviously a negative number, and it's saying, okay, well, if that's the case, what we're going to do is we're going to take the absolute value of that diameter and then calculate the volume, which may be actually what we want. So the code checks for negative values as before. However, instead of terminating the program, the absolute value function, is ABS function, is used to replace the variables with their absolute positive values. Okay, and the warning then displays the given text.